Hi guys, welcome to this screencast on sports psychology. We're still on individual differences and we're still looking at arousal. So we have looked at drive theory. We're now going to go on to the theory of the inverted U theory. Okay, this is the second theory that we're going to be discussing with regards to the effects of arousal on performance. Just another quick look at a typical question you may get on arousal theories. So we've got one here and the other one here. Now, before we start on the inverted U theory, I do just want to start where we left off and quickly go through drive theory again and just quickly overlook the definition of arousal. So again, just to remind us, arousal is the intensity of our behaviour, and it can be both. It can have a positive and negative effect on performance. Now, if we're looking at drive theory, what drive theory suggested was as arousal increases, so does performance. Okay, so does performance of the dominant response. So this is really good for autonomous learners, okay, because they have a well-learned motor program, so they have the correct response. So according to this theory, autonomous learners will be really successful if their arousal is high. Their performance will increase, and this is in contrast to a cognitive learner or a beginner who does not have such good motor programs in place, and their response or their dominant response will be incorrect, so their performance will potentially be low due to high arousal levels. Now, I do want to go through the evaluation points, specifically looking at the negatives to the drive theories. First of all, we looked at how it's too simplistic, okay, a view of relationship between performance and arousal levels. And also, it doesn't explain poor performance with high arousal levels with regards to elite performers. Okay, so for these autonomous learners, this suggests that as arousal increases, performance will continue to increase. Okay, performance of dominant response. It does not explain how that doesn't always happen, how certain football players like Cristiano Ronaldo will miss a penalty in a cup final, or Johnny Wilkinson suggesting that he never, ever, ever missed a conversion within rugby when his arousals have been high. So it completely disregards this impact of over arousal, which is going to come into play in the inverted U theory. Okay, so performers, if they are over aroused, can have a negative performance, or this can have a negative effect on performance. And this is what the inverted U theory suggests with regards to the graph here and how it is laid out. So this is what we're going to be discussing to today's screencast and in lessons. So first of all, if we look at the inverted U theory, this is it here. As you can see, you hopefully can understand why it's called the inverted U. If we go through the definition of what the inverted U theory is, or what it proposes that at low levels of arousal, performance is low. So arousal levels here, low, high, performance, low, high. So at low levels of arousal, performance is low. As arousal increases, so does quality of performance, but only to an optimum point. This is our optimum point of arousal here. What the inverted U theory suggests is after this point, gradual decline in performance if arousal continues to increase. So that is the inverted U theory right there, and that is what it suggested with regards to arousal and how it affects performance. This is it written down in full. So the inverted U theory proposes that at low levels of arousal, performance is low. As arousal increases, so does the quality of performance, but only to an optimum point. After this point, the quality of performance decreases if arousal continues to increase. So that is inverted U theory. I'm now going to give you a concrete example of what we would use in an exam question, and we need to be able to explain what happens if arousal levels are low, what happens at its optimum point, and also what happens if arousal levels are too high. We might in an exam only be questioned on one of them, low, moderate or high. However, we obviously need to know all of them. So first of all, starting off, if we're talking now low arousal level, so we're talking here, levels of arousal low, what is suggested is there'll be a poor performance because attentional field width is too wide. Okay, we cannot concentrate, we find it difficult to focus, and we focus on many irrelevant cues such as like daydreaming. Okay, so low levels of arousal essentially causes daydreaming, so this poor performance because attentional field width is far too wide. For example, goalkeeper misses the ball when they try to catch it due to attentional field width being too wide. Okay, so the next one we have is this moderate arousal. Now, moderate arousal is this optimum point here. This is the perfect state that we want to be in, and this is when our attentional field is ideal width. Okay, so the attentional field in this scenario is absolutely ideal. The performer is able to concentrate fully. Okay, and the impact this will have on performance is a really high performance. So the goalkeeper just catches the ball. Okay, because their performance is at that perfect state where we want to be at. Now, finally, this theory suggests if you are over aroused, you're also going to have a decrease in performance. Now, it's the opposite of low arousal. So, what happens now is our attentional field is far too narrow, okay? And it's also known as like hypervigilance. This is so you are really hypervigilant, you are really narrow minded within your vision, okay? So, poor performance because the attentional field width is too narrow. If you think about driving your car in front of your driving instructor the first time, they're watching you, so your arousal levels are really high. All of a sudden, your focus is so narrow-minded that you can't see the stuff that's going on the pavement or ahead of you, 4 cars ahead of you. This is what happens when your arousal levels are really high, which impacts on performance negatively. Bringing it back to sport, the goalkeeper misses or fumbles the ball because they're concentrating so much. Their kind of attention field is so narrow, it's almost like a state of panic. Okay, so selective attention just cannot operate in this scenario. So that is the inverted U theory in a nutshell. That is pretty much everything you need to know. Now, because we are A-level students, there is a slight modification of this theory, and it has been in some of the mark schemes, so we are going to discuss it, we are going to talk about this, and it's something that hopefully you'll understand when we go through this. So similar to the drive theory, how the drive theory is modified was by saying as arousal increases, so does performance of dominant response. That was a modification. Similarly, inverted U has a modification as well. So we're actually discussing now where in some sports your optimum point or the optimum midpoint can actually be when you're slightly low aroused in comparison to other sports where your optimum point may be with high arousal. So this is what kind of the graph looks like. I'm just going to tell you straight away sporting examples of this. So this is the optimum point here on the right hand side if you need to be slightly highly aroused, i.e. weightlifting. Okay, here this on the left hand side is optimum midpoint, might be when low arousal levels are kind of more important, potentially like snooker or golf. Okay, now we've discussed this before. There's 3 key aspects we need to talk about when we're discussing the importance of this, or things we need to consider, and these are personality type, the ability of the performer, and the task type as well at hand. So if you think about it now, low arousal levels lead to optimal performance for introverts. Okay, so if we remember back to personality, introverts have a sensitized reticular activating system, so they're going to want to have like low arousal levels. Okay, cognitive performers, now again, they don't have well learned motor programs, so the higher arousal, the negative impact this is going to have on performance. And then finally, those fine complex skills. Remember that complex skills complex skills need high perceptual load, high information processing and decision making, and these fine skills need small muscle groups. Okay, so and they require like high intricacy. So the lower arousal, the better would be for introverts, cognitive performers, fine complex skills. Now on the flip side to that, the optimal performance might be slightly more aroused, or high arousal leads to optimal performance for extroverts, because remember they have a less sensitized reticular activating system, so they need high arousal to perform for performance to increase. If you think of autonomous learners, okay, they have well learned motor programs, so they need high arousal, or high arousal leads to an increase in performance for autonomous learners. And then finally, gross skills need large muscle groups and require low intricacy, as well as simple skills needing low perceptual load, low information processing, decision making. So the more aroused would mean more optimal performance in those individual kind of cases that we need to consider. Okay, so that's a modification of the inverted U theory. Please make sure you have key questions on this, and your corner notes have both graphs drawn, specifically focusing on the inverted U theory, not necessarily its modification. However, please have this as well. Okay, thank you for listening.